our security analyst, Yaakov Lapin, back in the studio with us on this. Yaakov, on this issue of the Hamas delegation, the reports say that they're presenting to their Egyptian officials here a proposal to retain light weapons, perhaps in exchange for handing over some other heavy weapons, rockets that they may still have, in addition to tunnel maps here. Where does this issue appear to stand, at least from the Egyptian side? Is Israel accepting these kind of outcomes? Where does this issue stand?
Israel is not accepting this at all. Many of the civilians who were murdered on October 7th were murdered with so-called light weapons, AK-47s and Kalashnikovs. So what does that even mean in our context? If you have pickup trucks that can get through a border with death squads, and what about anti-tank missile launchers? Are those so-called light weapons? Those turned into anti-home missile launchers, we remember from October 7th. So all of these weapons are offensive. There are no such things as light weapons when we're talking about Hamas and the threat that it poses to the civilians living in the Gaza border envelope.
Well put, yeah.
And so, of course, Israel's not going to accept it. I think that what Hamas is doing here is creating a deception that is aimed at taking the pressure off of it to show that it's willing to go some way towards disarmament, when in fact it's not willing to do that at all. Also, what good are maps of tunnels if no one's going to act on those maps? Great, we've got the maps. But what about blowing up the tunnels? They're not about to let anybody do that voluntarily. So this is all a show, David, and it's designed to buy them time and to try and get pressure on Israel to withdraw from Gaza. And, of course, Israel is going to be counteracting this, to make sure that these ambitions are not fulfilled.
I think we're seeing something positive emerge today. There's reports of diplomats, I think some European, Egyptian, it's not exactly clear, but diplomats are being reported now, or quoted saying that they're not interested, or they're not going to take part in training any security force in Gaza that has Hamas elements in it. So it's not like Israel's out in the cold on this issue. It seems, as of now, we're still kind of in the mainstream on these demands, and Hamas may be on the outs. What's the pressure point on Hamas at this point? Some would say that it's a credible military threat from Israel, that divisions have to be mobilized. There has to be a real, at least optics of intention that, yes, Israel may come in and take the rest of the Gaza Strip. What appears to be the lever that will work at this point to get Hamas to take this action and get out?
For disarmament, I don't think anything's going to work, I have to be honest with you, because if we're talking about a jihadist organization that's willing to destroy most of Gaza for its jihad, for its war against Israel's existence.
It's important to mention. This was part of the plan. The destruction we see in there was...
This was something that they're willing and voluntarily marched into, knowing that it could have happened, and they still did it. And it's not like they're sitting now and saying, oh, we made a mistake. They're saying, no, as soon as we can, we're going to do more October 7th. That's what their leaders are saying. We have to understand who we're talking about. So, yes, they were willing to give up the hostages, and it was a surprise because they had intended to drag out the hostage release for years. That was their intention. When they saw that the IDF launched, Operation Gideon's Chariots B, they saw the divisions closing in. Qatar gets bombed, and they see that the U.S. is backing Israel. Then they understand that this strategy is not working. They give up the hostages. That was designed to buy them time so that they could rearm, not so that they can disarm. They're not going to disarm, I think, ever voluntarily.
Appreciate your analysis. Yaakov Lapin, for being with us. Thank you.
I can imagine it. I think that we don't know what he's decided. He himself doesn't know yet what he's going to decide, just to put that on the table. I don't think President Trump has made a decision. He's creating all the options. But if we look at what he's saying, and let's look at what Prime Minister Netanyahu said just now while boarding the aircraft back to Israel. He said that President Trump thinks that the Iranians have learned that it's a mistake to cross him, that they understand who they're having to make a deal with. In other words, that if they don't come up with the goods, they're going to face attack. And if this is what Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying after these intensive deliberations with President Trump, I think that tells us, when we add what President Trump has been saying, that President Trump is genuinely open to a deal. He's genuinely looking to see if a deal is to be had. And what he wants to do is to leverage all of the past military engagements that you've just described and others to try and create basically gunboat diplomacy that will lead to a deal. That, in his mind, would enable him to say, look, I didn't need to use force because I've already used it multiple times. The Iranians understand they can't cross me. And the big question is, if that actually happens, what would the deal look like? Would it be anything more than a delay tactic? Would it be anything more than the Iranians waiting for President Trump to leave the White House and some other, American administration that wouldn't be, interested in using force against them, and then they would, move forward on their nuclear programs, on their missile programs? What would be the recipe for the missile program? Would there be some sort of, quiet clause to this deal? There are so many questions going forward. But at the end of the day, President Trump, I think, is genuinely interested in trying to utilize every opportunity to reach a deal. It's a real attempt by him. It's not just a show to show his base that he tried before using force. I think it still remains a real possibility. And the Iranians have an interest in a deal, too. They don't want to face American firepower. Who wants to face the firepower of the greatest, military power on the planet? Nobody. And that includes the Iranians. So they are going to try.
So is it only the Israelis that want military action at this point, would you say?
No, it's not only. First of all, let's talk about the millions of Iranians that want military action, right? They definitely want military action. And I think that there are some in the United States that want military action. By the way, in Israel also, there's a debate about the objective of military action. Some think that it could be the domino that ends up toppling the regime. Others are skeptical that this would happen, because there's no guarantee that military action is what's going to bring the regime down. You still need people on the ground to take advantage of any military action. And we know that this regime is willing to massacre, commit mass murder. So how do we know that won't happen again? So we're not dealing with any, assurances or guarantees. This is a very murky intersection. I think we're going to see a direction pretty soon. But I think that President Trump is still serious about finding a deal. And if the Iranians give him what he's looking for, then he'll go for it.
All right. Thank you both.